Hello, church family. Pastor Seth here, and we're looking at January 9th's reading. We are in Genesis 25, verse 27, and we go all the way to Genesis 28, verse 5. This is a pretty long reading compared to yesterday. Well, what we see here is in Genesis 25 is that Esau sells his birthright, and we're introduced to who they are. Esau likes to go hunting and is in the fields, and Isaac has more affection for him. And Jacob likes to stay around the house and cook, and Rebekah has more affection for him. And so one day Esau comes back from a hunt and asks Jacob for some stew, and Jacob kind of manipulates him a little bit and says, okay, I'll give you stew, but only if you give me your birthright. And Esau, with the flair for the dramatic, says, I'm about to die. And it's very unlikely he's about to die. This is a very disproportionate trade, birthright for stew, yet he treats his birthright with contempt. He does not value the future blessing that his father could give him over what is present. And we see that is kind of the highlight here, is Esau values the present rather than his birthright. And we're also introduced to the character of Jacob, that he is a deceiver, that he is a manipulator, and he doesn't really have the character that you would think God would want to bless. And this actually is a good point. And Walter Brueggemann does point this out, that Jacob actually is a fulfillment of what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1. He says that God uses the weak to shame the strong. He uses the foolish to shame the wise. And this is exactly what we see in Jacob. He is not someone you want to lift up, yet God uses him for his purposes. Well, in the next, starting chapter 26, we get to know Isaac a little bit. And Isaac is kind of following in the footsteps of Abraham. There is a famine, and he goes down towards Egypt, just like Abraham, and he gets to meet Abimelech, and he actually doesn't trust God either, and so he says, hey, Rebekah, pretend to be my sister, just like Abraham did, and because he was afraid for his life. And Abimelech, who did know Abraham as well, says, why did you do this? Anyone could have taken her for her as their wife. And so Abimelech then bans people from talking to her or being near her, and that kind of mirrors what happened to Abraham. Abraham said, Sarah, you be my sister. Pharaoh takes her in, and then God gives Pharaoh a dream. And so these events are very interestingly connected. And then there's issues with the wells, just like with Abraham. He has issues with the Philistine wells, and they stop him up, and they have these interactions with them, with different tribes, and then he has a treaty with Abimelech, just like Abimelech made a treaty with Abraham. And we see that God is with Isaac in the same way that he's with Abraham. And that's the connection that we're seeing here, is that God is faithful, just like he's faithful to Abraham, he's faithful to Isaac. Now we have an interesting little tidbit here in verse 34 that Esau married 2 Hittite wives, and they became a miserable, made life miserable. This is the first instance of in-laws hating each other, and so this is an interesting tidbit, but it kind of sets up something a little bit in the future. Now, the next section is very, very intriguing, and this is where Isaac calls Esau and says, hey, can you bring me a special meal and I will bless you? And so Esau goes out for the special meal, and Rebekah overhears her husband and manipulates him and says, okay, Jacob, go in there. I'm going to make this just like your dad likes it. You're going to dress up just like Esau, and we're going to deceive him so that you can get the blessing over Esau. And so they go through this elaborate ruse, and Isaac is not quite convinced at first, but over a few attempts, he's finally convinced enough to be able to give a blessing to Isaac, and he gives him a great blessing. But Esau comes back, and right after Jacob leaves, Esau walks in the room and says, Father, hears the game, and Isaac trembles and says, "Oh, who was it that I gave the blessing to?" And it was probably, he realizes that was Jacob. And Esau says, "Bless me." And for us, it's like, what does it matter if you bless both of them? But there's this heavy weight that comes with the blessing of a family in this culture. It really is a legal transaction, so to speak, and a divine mandate that he has given to Jacob. And so he says, "I can't give you another blessing." In fact, he just confirms the blessing he gave to Jacob, to Esau. And then what happens is Esau hates Jacob, and Rebekah hears that Esau's plan is to kill him, and so she gets Isaac to, again, bless him. Isaac knows that it's Jacob now and blesses him and sends him to get a wife, not of the Hittites, but of their ancestors. And so that's what we see in this passage. We see that God works again through relational drama. We see that he is a God who cares about each of us, but we also see that Jacob is not a man that we want to lift up as being the example of us to follow. But God does use the foolish things to shame the wise, and he uses the weak things to shame the strong. Why? So that no one can boast. And that's true for us as it's true for anyone else. We cannot boast because of what God has done. We cannot boast for what God has done through Jacob, or what he's done miraculously through Jesus, or what he's done miraculously through us. We cannot boast because it's all grace.